Greetings, everyone. Glad to be here again for another episode of Let's Talk Family, a show that is designed to provide you with information and resources to strengthen your family. And the topics range from finances to um, health, physical fitness, anything that deals with family. And I always like to start the new year off talking about marriage. And since this is the first show of 2022, we will start dealing with marriages. If we start with that foundation, that marriage, then that's where the family comes together. So always start with marriage. At any point during the show, feel free to like, comment, and share, and we will definitely get to your comments that you have. So without further ado and prolonging this, because I got some heavy hitters today that's going to talk about marriage. As you know, Warren, Mr. Bowtie Feaster, I am passionate about marriages and about families. My platform is a marriage foundation specialist, where I focus on the foundation of marriage. Since you're going to be together till death do you part, as said in the traditional marriage vows, then why not enjoy the time that you're together? The goal is not just to survive marriage, but to thrive in marriage. All right, the first guest. All of these guests have been on here before, so some of you will recognize some of them. But the first guest that I'm going to bring up is Dr. Kimberly Gregory. Hello, Kim. How are you?
Hello. How are you, Warren? It's
Well,
great to be back on the show.
welcome back. We are so glad to have you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
So take a couple of minutes and remind everybody who you are.
Yes, sure. Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Kimberly Gregory. I come to you as a doctorate degree in community care and counseling. My focus is marriage and family counseling, but my primary focus is African American marriages. I've done some extensive research on African American marriages, sustaining those marriages so that they decrease the divorce rate. Right? We know that African Americans have the highest divorce rate among any ethnic group in the United States. I'm also an instructor at Liberty University. I teach classes from issues and trends and counseling and community counseling to marriage and family counseling. And I do that as an instructor there at LU Online, Liberty University Online. And I am also the director of college and career readiness at College of the Albemarle. And there I'm helping students from age 16 to 60 develop a career pathway and enter either into a job that provides them sustaining wages or into post-secondary enrollment. So I am honored to be with you again today. You can reach me at gregorykimberly01@gmail.com.
All right. So glad to have you back, Kim. I'm going to put you back in the back channel real quick. The next guest that we have is Jill. Hello, Jill. How are you?
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here. So, and this hello to everybody. Glad to be back. So, I want to tell you that
So
I
glad.
am Jill Bulluck. And can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I am a life and relationship expert. I like to call myself a transformation scientist. And I'm the founder of BE Transform Networks, which is the networks for professional women, helping them to first transform themselves, transform their relationships, and ultimately transform the world through renewing their mind, their body, and their spirit through storytelling. And so that's so important because it's when people share their story, it's a lot of healing that takes place, and they are able to break generational curses in the midst of all of that. And I've been doing this for over a decade. I also work with a focus with singles, particularly because I feel like the best time to start preparing for your marriage and to build the foundation of your marriage is before you get in it, right? And starting with a whole and healed individual. I am also the founder of the Be Transformed Community, which is an online community for those women where we come and gather and talk about real issues that women are dealing with. We are governed by spiritual principles that govern success in our lives and in our relationships. I'm a wife of 9 years, and I'm a guardian of my nephew, Caden. We actually traveled to South Carolina for his birthday this weekend. And I also do contracts as well. So that's a wrap about who I am and who I be on these streets. So thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to have the conversation tonight.
We are so glad to have you, Jill. So I'm put you in the back channel real quick and introduce the final panelist that we will have today. Joe, welcome. How are you? Unmute, unmute, unmute. All
Rookie
right.
mistake. I'm doing well,
Yeah,
sir. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Tell everybody about yourself.
Yeah, good evening. What's going on, everyone? My name is Jill Msefya. I am the one half of Forever Marriages. My wife and I, we started this ministry back in 2017, and we had one goal in mind, and that goal was to bring marriages together. We saw a lot of marriages being done in isolation. And to us, we wanted to have a community of people who will love on us, who will challenge us, who will hold us accountable, and who will just encourage us to be the better versions of ourselves. So we started Forever Marriages, and it has grown from there on all glory to God. And today we do so many things. My wife and I, we are certified marriage coaches, and we offer a unique perspective or unique coaching approach where we offer husband and wife to husband and wife coaching. So we believe in the dynamic and the power that the couple has together to attack and take on the challenges that they see in their marriages. But outside of that, we also do offer husband to husband or wife to wife coaching. We have resources just on our website, www.forever-marriages.com, for you to consume. And we just believe this one thing: God is the author of marriage, and we don't get to do marriage any other way. We can have good marriages, but if we want a marriage that is fulfilling, that honors God, and that actually achieves the purpose of why God has put us together, then God needs to be at the center of that. So I am so excited to be here. I am looking forward to the conversation and just learning more from these other two wonderful professionals in this marriage space. And let's get to this. I'm excited.
Everybody's paying attention. I hope y'all see we got some powerhouses here on marriage. Let's go ahead and bring everybody in. Yeah, got some powerhouses in here. So I'm ready. They're ready. We're all excited. So let's just go ahead and get started. I want to open up the show and really just discuss some of the myths about marriage or some of the preconceived notions about marriage. One of the things that I've noticed as talking to couples or even individuals is no need for counseling. Like why do I need counseling? You know, we're doing good, everything is fine. Or why do I need premarital counseling? Or like Jill and either Kim deal with a lot of the people before they even think about marriage. So, you know, let's talk about some of those myths before we even get married. You know, some of the things that come up. What are some of the things that you have noticed?
Well, you know, Warren, you know that I'm a certified marital facilitator, right? And I am big on marital preparation. And marital preparation for remarriages and new marriages looks very different.
Right.
So I think I said this on the last show. You prepare for everything else. Why wouldn't you prepare for marriage? Why wouldn't you take the time to learn about this person that you intend on spending the rest of your life with? And maybe I should not say intend, maybe I should say that you will spend the rest of your life with, right? Because that's God's intention for marriage. He created marriage as a lifelong commitment and not one that we could enter into lightly, thinking that as soon as something goes wrong, you know, we'll just head to the courthouse and get divorced. Um, so I believe that marital preparation does involve getting to know that person, knowing their likes, their dislikes, learning what your marriage will look like, understanding how to communicate, understanding how to disagree, and understanding that it is okay to argue and learn how to argue so that there is an outcome that allows both of you to grow.
Right. Yeah, that's it's interesting because a lot of people don't think about marriage until we think about marriage.
Mm,
And so the perspective that you come from says we, and even what Jill said in her intro, we need to talk about being married before we start talking about being married.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Before you find the person,
Yeah.
before you are out there, eligible for marriage, why can't we start in the teenage years? You
Yeah.
know?
Yes. And really your parents, right? Whether they're
Mm,
married or apart, they are your first teachers. They show us they show us how to communicate with each other. How what they're going to allow us to do when we're having disagreements with our siblings,
right.
and how they resolve those siblings and those married parents when they argue and disagree themselves. How are they resolving those issues? And so they are our first teachers. And as children are growing and developing, they're sucking in all of that information. And when they get older, they do have the option to accept what they've learned or decide to do something better,
Right.
you know?
Joe, what you got on the subject?
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Kim, you hit it right on the nail in that
Mm.
we
Don't
do
call her
not
Dr. Kim. Don't call her
prepare.
Dr. Kim. Just call her Kim.
Hey,
She didn't have
Dr.
on the
Kim
subject.
earned her PhD, so respect to that. And but I'll call you Kim if that's what you prefer. But anyways, I mean, I think you hit it right on the nail in that we do not prepare for marriage, and I always want to think about why. Why is it that we do not prepare for marriage? And if we take a step back and evaluate this culture as a whole, we are a product of our environment.
Yes.
And if we want to be real, our culture does not value marriages. This is a covenant relationship. This is a relationship that God puts you together in. There is purpose, there is value, there is honor. Like there
Yes.
is so much power in the covenant relationship of marriage, but we don't see it that way because why? Our role models, unfortunately, the ones we see on TV every day, they're entering into marriage and out of marriage just like it's just the next fad, right?
Yeah.
So we have to change and to recondition our mindset and see this thing that this is a lifetime this is a lifetime commitment. And Warren, like as you said, we don't just want to survive the
Yes.
50, maybe 60, however many years that we're going to be blessed to be with our spouse. We want to enjoy it. And in that
Yes.
enjoyment, we want to bring honor to God. So we need to make sure that we understand how did God design marriage, and how we understand that is we invest in the education, we invest in the time to learn, we invest in the time to learn our spouses. A lot of people think that you come into marriage and things that you're supposed to work.
Right.
That is, we don't treat any other major endeavor that we go into and thinking that it's just going to work. We invest in learning, we invest in reading, we invest in the time to be better at that craft. And unfortunately, we don't have that mindset when we come into marriage. Marriage is like that, or it's even more significant that we take the time to invest in it to be
Yes.
better. So learn your spouse. What makes them tick, what makes them go, what makes them feel encouraged, what is love to them, right?
Yes.
So the more that we take time into just understanding who that person is, and they're not just a person who I'm stuck with, they're God's child, God's son or God's daughter, and he sees them very special. We need to have those spiritual eyes as to how God sees them. That's how we need to see them as well.
Yeah, yeah.
It's you said something that I love saying, and I want to take the opportunity and say here we spend more time studying the right college that we want to go to, trying to determine what career. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out what house to buy, even something as simple as what car to buy, what
That's,
credit card to buy. But when we talk about marriage, I hate it when I see all of the popular, social media posts and comments and shows and stuff. And oh man, what you bring it to the table, and you got to be perfect, and you already got to have a bag. We're missing the growth. You
yeah,
see what I'm
yeah,
saying? The growth in marriage. If everything, like we're not even looking at like my family. Like when me and my wife got married, our house was sad. Like we had put together furniture because the furniture was put together. You see what I'm saying? And so it took over time and growing together that we was able to purchase real furniture and get rid of the put together furniture. And we've grown to know each other. And that's the part that I do not hear the mainstream talking about marriage, that growth, that getting to know each other. Coming to America, the first one, when he was telling Hakeem, hey, sometimes you just gotta he said you gotta grow into love, instead of just loving up front. No, he said sometimes nausea comes before love.
yeah. And let's take it back to the basics, right? If we're talking about marriage, the only marriage we're discussing is biblical marriage, right? Because
Yes,
that's God's intention. And let's take it way back to the basics in Genesis. God prescribes what the way that He desires marriage to be.
yeah,
And that covenant marriage is so powerful. Like you said, Joe, it's so powerful. When you think of finding a mate, a spouse that loves you as much as God loved the church. Oh, can you
yeah,
imagine that? You
yeah,
know, and having that not only just the giver of that love, but the receiver of that love. Can you imagine how a marriage would thrive if that were the mindset of those today that are entering into that
yes,
covenant relationship?
yes.
You know,
Enter. Yes,
yes, it's not to be taken lightly, right?
Mhm.
And when it's easy to say, "Oh yeah, I picked that person for me. I selected them, or they selected me," but that's not how God operates.
right.
God is very intentional in all that He does, and He created us as relational beings,
Yes.
Yes,
right? God created us to be in relationship with one another, and out of that relationship grows marriage. The goal of marriage, right, is to grow families,
yes,
and then to have that level of love within the family so that it grows outward. What's going on in what we see on social media and on television today does not align with God's original purpose for marriage, and it can be deceiving
right.
to what people really expect a marriage will actually look like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. This image that is being portrayed about marriage is so distorted.
Mm,
It is one of the things I always say is marriage is perfect. Like marriage is so perfect. It's been replicated over in government, over in business. It's been replicated so many times.
yeah.
We're the problem. Like we're messing marriage up.
Yeah.
So we have to get right. And that's what I like about, looking at talking about marriage before we start talking about marriage. Something that I didn't think about until you came on the show, Kim. Like talking about marriage before we even talk about marriage. Like,
Yeah.
what is this thing about marriage? What is marriage? What is your understanding of marriage? When we say the two shall come together as one, that means two people are coming together separately first,
Yeah.
two individuals. And one of the things that we are losing ourselves in the marriage also.
Mhm.
we're coming together as one unit, but we're losing individualism in each other. And that's another problem that I see in marriages, you know?
Yeah, if I like my line of thought, I was as soon as you said that, I was thinking this other aspect that a lie that we bring into marriage is that my spouse is supposed to make me happy, or my spouse is supposed to make me complete. My spouse is supposed to heal all these wounds that I had, whatever,
Yes.
like all those chain of lies that we bring into
Yeah.
marriage. And that's the aspect that you just said, like we kind of come into marriage with these expectations, and in a way we kind of lose ourselves, so we have to make sure that, and this is why it's so important, like Dr. Kim, I'm gonna keep going back to why we need to prepare for marriage before marriage, and that we need to do the healing work before
Yeah.
marriage. We need to do the personal growth work before marriage. Like all these things that people have been saying, or things I'm noticing about myself, all these things, I need to make sure that I am a whole person who is standing at the altar ready to receive my bride into this covenantal relationship. Because if I'm not, what marriage will do, marriage will expose my weaknesses, marriage will expose
Yes.
my
Yeah.
wounds, marriage will expose my immaturity. Like marriage is going to expose everything about who you are when you come in together. And if you don't have that maturity to say, you know what, I, let me say this. I think that no one comes into marriage perfect, and we need to understand that. And we don't come into marriage without flaws. We don't come into marriage with areas of growth. I know I did. And kudos to my wife for for bearing with me all these years. But when we come into marriage, understanding that we have flaws, and the one characteristic that God calls us to have, He hates the opposite of this. He hates pride. He loves humility. So when we
Yes.
come into marriage, humility is the covering that we need to have in understanding that I'm not perfect, but I am called to love this individual perfectly. And I cannot do this alone. That's the other aspect of learning
Yes.
before marriage. We need to spend time in our singlehood and developing our relationship with Christ, because if we don't have a relationship with Him, it is impossible to really love. And the commands that He gives us, the first four commands are all focused on our relationship with Him, and the next focus on our relationship with others, and as Jesus summarizes them. The first one is love God.
Mm.
And then if you're able to love God, if you love God, it is impossible to hate His children. If you love God, it is impossible to not love your spouse. You're not going to do it perfectly, but it's impossible to not love your spouse. So that's, as we're preparing for this, cultivating that relationship with Christ is key.
Mhm.
Yes. Boy, you said a mouthful that time.
Yeah.
So let me ask this question, and I'm gonna throw a monkey wrench in the plan. So get ready. Y'all ready? We're
Right.
talking about we're talking about biblical marriages. We're talking about the
Born
foundation of marriage.
angel.
Say again. Oh, I thought I heard something. We're talking about marriage from a biblical perspective, where marriage was started from. But what about those that are not in Christ? Do they have a dog in the fight? Do they have, you know, can they have a successful marriage? Can they, what do we say to them?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. The answer to that question is yes, they can. Um,
I believe I believe they can have a.
Jill, we
So
can't hear
the
you. I
the
see
word
your
of
mic
God
moving.
works whether you're okay. Okay, I don't know why.
There's a delay. That's what it is. Go ahead. We'll give you the go. We'll go ahead. Go ahead. We'll give you the delay time.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, really quick is that whether they're believing have successful marriage
You're
because
br-
so the word of God is true.
you're breaking up really bad, Jill.
So if they follow that guidance that's
I think she's having a very bad
there
connection.
or whatever the case.
Yeah. And exactly, from what we're hearing, what Jill is saying is that yes, um, whether or not the
This may
couple
be
has incorporated God into their marriage, they can still have a successful marriage.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that as well. And the one statement that I hate that people say will say, "Well, I'm gonna give you the biblical perspective, and then I'm gonna give you a practical statement or the
Wow.
practice." Like biblical is practical, right?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
all these foundational principles that we're saying, they're universal because
Yes.
God still created every human being in his image. Whether
Yes.
Yes.
you believe in him or not, we're
That's right.
all created in his image. And in that image, we crave for relationship. And we're not perfect because sin has entered the world, right? So in our fallen state, we're gonna hurt people.
Yes.
We're gonna fall short of our commitments. That's just the reality of who we are in our condition. But in that, if we have principles that we're called to have humility, forgiveness, patience, right? If we have these things, whether we believe in God or not, these are the foundational to your lasting relationship.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like if I'm able to live with my wife in a way that I understand her, in a way that I am patient with her, and in a way that I'm forgiven, we can do all these things. So the trick is in our flesh, it's harder to do that. That's why Christ is so essential. In our flesh, it's hard to forgive my wife in times where I feel like I'm in the right, right? It's hard for me to be patient when I'm entitled and I'm selfish and I know that this is what I want. But Christ empowers us to be able to do so. So this is where the difficulty comes in if you're not in the faith. But no, we can have this success. You know, we can have we do you can have a good marriage without God. But so Christ just makes it a little easier. But definitely I agree. We can have it.
Joe, Joe, you're saying something, but let's think about this, right? If God had not created marriage, what would they have?
Wow.
Right? So whether they decide to bring him in or not, because he is as sovereign and as merciful as he is, he's still going to be there. He's
Yes.
still going to show up on their behalf, whether they ask him to, whether they invite him in, or whether they seek after him,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So when someone says that they're married, and regardless of their religious affiliation, I immediately know, because they are acknowledging marriage, that God is already there, you know. So whether or not they bring him in when there are times that they're struggling, and they bring him in when there's times of joy, things could be a little easier, right?
Yes.
Because we know how God operates. But that doesn't mean that he won't show up on their behalf, just like he would show up on the behalfs of the believers.
Yes. We got a comment says it's things that are written in a person's soul that affect the marriage.
Mm,
That's interesting because you know you made the comment earlier, Joe, that what you like if you said you got to do that healing first, you got to find yourself first. And if you don't, that's what the comment is saying, then it'll get exposed. If you don't do the healing prior to, it'll get exposed. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't know any of this before I got married, and all those things that were in me, they came out, and I had to deal with them. I was living the life of play, what I'm saying, bouncing from here to there, going to clubs, having fun and hanging out. And that was the life that I was living, and I didn't have a problem with it. But when I got married, a lot of things that, I hadn't dealt with as a young child or didn't look into or even think that that was a problem, once I got married, now I am planning my entire remainder of my life with somebody, and these are things that I need to work on.
Yeah.
You know,
And I have what I call the 3 R's. And I apply these 3 R's to those that are thinking about getting married a second or third time for remarriage, right? But these 3 R's also apply to new marriages. And they're real simple: resolve, rebuild, and then restore.
Mm.
yes,
What you have to do during the resolution period is you have to seek within yourself, identify those flaws that you have. Just learn who you are, figure that out. And the areas that need improvement, spend some time, Miss Jill, doing some self-care, some self-improvement, making yourself a better person, right? God desires the best that we have to offer, right?
yes,
And if we are entering into that biblical marriage with our spouse because God desires it, our spouse deserves it, right?
yes,
And then once you're resolved those things, then that's when you have an opportunity to rebuild. It's identifying every area that's an opportunity for change or improvement, to be a better Kim, to be a better person, right?
yes,
And it's at that point that the relationship is able to build.
yes,
That's when you are establishing that new foundation to rebuild something better than what you had before.
yes, yes.
And Dr.
Jill, there we go. Come
Finally,
on,
yes, Dr.
man.
Kimberly, I love what you said. And I believe that I heard this from Esther Perel, who's a relationship specialist with intimacy and all kind of other things. And she says it this way: most of us are going to have 2 to 3 people that we fall in love with over our lifetime. And some of us are going to do it with the same person. So even for those that are in their first marriage, I feel like that can apply as well, because you may need to resolve or even dissolve your current marriage and the current arrangement and stage that it's in, and then start to rebuild on that. So it doesn't have to necessarily mean if your marriage isn't where you want it to be, you don't feel like your needs are getting met, your husband don't feel like his needs are getting met. That doesn't mean that the marriage has to end and you have to move on with somebody else. That's another thing. I feel like people are so easy to quit on marriage. And
Yeah.
Yeah. Come
Dr.
on.
Bowtie, Mr. Bowtie, you hinged on it earlier, as well as Joe, when you guys were talking about that growth. A
Yeah.
myth is people think that they're going to just automatically grow. They think they're going to automatically grow together. But the truth is, if you're not intentional about growing together, what happens? You grow apart, and you look up 10 years later, you've been on 2 different paths, and now you're at 2 different destinations, and people be acting so shocked. It's not revolutionary. It was kind of like either you intentionally plan by design, or it leads to destruction and dysfunction by default. So you have to be intentional about that growth path, not just as an individual, which is really important, because you want to have that individual growth path, but you also want to have that marital growth path when there's things that you're doing together. For example, this year, me and my husband decided that, okay, at least once a month, we're either going to read a book or listen to audio together. Because what I know for sure, what you listen to, what trainings you're under, which people you're around, all those things are going to impact who you are, right? And if you guys are constantly under different teaching and influences, you're going to have a different mindset. And the Word of God says, how can two come together in Christian love unless we agree? So we have to constantly be in agreement in this evolution journey.
Yeah.
Look, I'm gonna tell you, it took you 30 minutes to get everything straight, but when you came in, you made up for them 30 minutes. Ooh, child, girl. Yes. Yes. I'm glad you had all them problems. You had all that
Yeah.
folk.
The enemy was trying to block something. He knew what he was doing. He
Yes.
knew what he was trying to
Yes.
prevent.
Yes.
That's
Push him way back, let me tell you.
All right, we got a question on the floor. And the question is, how do you bring excitement in the marriage to where you see the love of God in it? Woo-wee. Let me say it again. And look, first person that start talking, that's who gets it. How do you bring excitement in the marriage to where you see the love of God in it?
Well, I'll start, but then I'm going to pass the baton, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, if God is in your marriage and you don't see him, you need to take your blinders off.
All right.
Right? Because, and you need to acknowledge his presence, right? Because he alone brings us joy. And if we find joy, if we can find joy with God, then we can certainly find joy with the spouse that he has given us. The excitement part comes when you delight in God, you're going to delight in your spouse. But if you're focusing on something other than that joy, that if you're looking for something and focusing on something other than that, you're gonna miss it.
Yes.
I'm handing the baton over.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. And two things I would say: your own individual relationship with God, like that is key. That is what's going to empower you. That is what's going to allow you to take your blinders off, as Kim said. That is what's going to allow you to start to begin to feel joy again, and fulfillment and satisfaction. All
Yes.
that comes from God. It doesn't come from your spouse. Contrary
Yes.
to the popular belief in that my spouse is supposed to make me happy, your spouse is going to fail you. Your spouse is going to
Yes.
fall short.
Yeah.
And the only one who does not fail, the only one who will not disappoint you is God. So when you shift that dependency, when you shift that seeking to be fulfilled unto him, these things will be, and you will feel joy and peace and satisfaction, all these things in your marriage, because God is the one who is supplying those into your marriage. The
Yes.
second thing I'll say is, and we started talking about this initially when we began to talk, is that every coaching client that comes and says, hey, I'm interested in working with you guys, we're telling them this: we believe that every marriage needs to have regular counseling. Like, and regular can look different to you. Regular can be, we need counseling monthly, we need counseling quarterly or twice a year. Whatever regular is, you need to have regular counseling in your marriage. Because why? We need an objective perspective, an
Yeah.
objective look into how we're doing. When we say, hey, we're doing good, my flesh wants to think we're doing good. The enemy wants to think that we're doing good. Meanwhile, there is the back door that we have left open to him
Yeah.
to come into our marriage and wreak havoc,
Come
right?
on,
So
Joe.
you need that perspective to say, nah, Joe, you're not doing good. Or in
Yeah.
this area, this you're doing good in this area, but
Yeah.
there's a little bit of work to do. There's healing that can still happen, because we don't come into marriage fully healed, right? And the second aspect that we think every marriage is, needs constantly is coaching. You need ongoing coaching. As you like, and you probably have seen this before. No champion has ever won a championship without a coach.
You
And
about
your
to say what
marriage
I was
is
about
a
to say.
trophy to be get, right? It's a
Mm.
championship, till death do us part. You need a coach who is going to help you not only realize what your desired future is, but that coach is going to hold you accountable. That coach is going to help you
Yes.
remove obstacles in your way right now that are preventing you to getting to where you need to go.
Yes.
You guys tore that up, but I'm just going to throw in something on the end. I always love the relationship between Jonathan and David in the Bible, right? And one thing I love about the relationship is that I believe it was Jonathan said to David that, he loved him like he loved his own soul. And I feel like even though it was a platonic relationship, that friendship was such a great demonstration of love. The word of God tells us in John 13:34 and 35 to love one another as I have loved you. By this, all will know you're my disciples when you have love for one another. And then we also know in Ephesians, it talks about submitting to one another. So my point here is that we have to start loving selflessly. Like, that's where I feel like marriage go wrong, when people start to get in such a selfish mode. And there's a big movement right now with, I don't know if you want to call it Scientology or whatever, this new age thing is all about
me, myself, and I. And yes, you do have a place in your marriage, but as an individual, but you can't lose sight that you have to love yourself, but you also have to love the individual as yourself, because you guys are one. And so if you're talking about how can you glorify God in your marriage, is love yourself, absolutely, but love your partner as yourself, because you are as one, right? You're one, period.
Yes. And think about this. How many of you want someone to give you 50%?
Come on now.
I want
Teddy P had it wrong. Teddy P had it wrong. He had it wrong. Teddy P said it's not 60-40. He said it's not 70-30. He said it's not 90-10, but it's 50-50. Teddy, you had it wrong.
Wrong. He is wrong. If you are not bringing 100% to the table, then the other 100% is not going to meet you there.
Come on. That's good.
That's one of the things I say. If you're only giving up 50%, what if what the 50% that you're holding back is what your spouse needs?
And that's the back door that you left open, right? That what you were talking about, Joe?
Yes. Yeah. You need that back door open. Somebody is coming in, or something is coming in.
That's right.
When he asked the question about bringing excitement in the marriage, I see how we look at marriage as, and I don't want to point fingers and say that I'm interpreting what he's saying, but as I see this, what I see is we're looking at marriage as something that is supposed to be exciting every day, pleasurable every day, fulfilling every day. I'm supposed to wake up every morning and just love being next to my spouse. And I'm sure I'm not the only one on this panel that knows that there's some days when you don't even want to come home. There are some days where you don't want to be bothered, where you don't want to deal with, and so those days you got to push through. You have to push through. In my book, Marriage's Work, you get out what you put in. The last chapter, I'm talking about finding a higher power. And to the Christians, I say, hey, that higher power is Christ. To the non-Christians, you have to find something outside of the marriage that you can hold on to, so that during those hard times, you have to have something outside of you during those hard times that's going to keep you focused. So that when you don't feel like coming home, you're coming home. When you don't feel like laying in the bed next to your spouse, you're laying in the bed next to your spouse, because it's going to be time. Marriage it's the good, the bad, and it's the ugly. It's all of that. When we say till death do us part, when we say in sickness and in health, when we say for better and for worse, a lot of people hear for better, for health, so they don't hear the sickness. I was teaching a class, and I was honored to have a couple that was in there that was married. I think it was either 49 years or 53 years, but it was a long time. And he said that, and this wasn't what he said in the class. I talked to him later on. He said, my wife had to do things that I would have never thought that she would have to do. And what he was referencing to was all the medical appointments that he's had. He's had 2 open heart surgeries, and she's had to do some medical things that if your mom ain't going to do it, then your wife going to do it. Or if your wife ain't going to do it, your mom the only person going to do it. And it's those times that build these marriages, that strengthen these marriages and keep these marriages going. So let's give the people some pillars. Let's give them some foundation. Let's give them some nuggets. Since I'm already talking, I'll jump right into it. I love it when I hear people that are about to get married, and I'll go up to them and I say, you're going to hear a lot of information, and a lot of people are going to give you a lot of information and tell you all this about marriage. I said, and I'm going to tell you like this, no matter what they tell you, you filter it through this one phrase right here. Learn your spouse. Learn your spouse. And the reason why I say that is because Joe, I might come to Joe and say, hey, Joe, check this out, man. I'm about to get married. Or either, Joe, I've been married X amount of time, and, this is what I do. And that might mean absolutely nothing to Joe and Marissa. Absolutely not. It may not be something that neither one of them like. For example, it's going to the movies. I might say, hey, you know what? Me and my spouse go to the movies. That's our date night. We do it once a month. We get dressed up. You see what I'm saying? And we go out and Joe be like, we don't even like movies. You know, so every advice you get, you filter it through learn your spouse.
I love that, Dr. Botox. I keep wanting to say Dr. Botox. I'm speaking it into Mr. Botox. I love that because often we assume that our partner knows what we want or assume that they're going to meet our needs. And we have to, one, share it. But like you're saying, if we're intentional about getting to know that person, that's just big. Because let me drop this. If you don't do anything else in your marriage, which I hope you do, but listen, the primary things you need to be doing is making sure that you hear your spouse, you're listening actively, right? And I know I believe on both sides of the aisle, but I think sometimes as women, we can be even more guilty. We're so caught up in the phone and we want to multitask. Put the phone down and be fully present so you can hear what they are saying. Also, make sure you let your partner know that they're being seen, that you see them, that you acknowledge them, that you are paying attention. We over rely on verbal communication, and we already know verbal communication is only 7% of communication. The other 93% of communication that's happening is through body language, and so we want to make sure that we are being intentional about not only just hearing but seeing and listening with our ears, with our eyes, and with our heart as we're navigating through this thing.
Yeah. I've got two things that I'd like to add. One is if you believe that your marriage is going to sustain based upon the love that you have for your spouse alone, you're wrong.
Say that again, Kim, please.
The people in the back and in the front.
People in the back. Yeah, say it again.
That your marriage cannot survive on love alone.
Yes.
Okay. And I don't think I need to say anything else about that, because if they're listening to the show, they're hearing what else needs to happen, right, in order for your marriage to grow. But also, speaking about communication, how do you communicate? You need to know how your spouse communicates to you. I hear all the time, I've fallen out of love with my husband, or I don't love my wife any longer. But what does that mean?
Right.
Does it mean that you don't recognize your spouse's way of communicating love to you? Are you missing that?
Right.
How do they talk to you? Is opening the door for you or making sure that that thing that you wanted so badly, you receive it? Are they a giver? You know, are they the one that communicates by gifts? Do they communicate by acts? How are they communicating love to you? So before you say they don't love you or you don't love them, make sure you have a clear understanding of how they're communicating love to you.
Yeah, like Dr. Kim, like anybody who says, I have fallen out of love, my response is, well, you had it wrong from the get-go. Because you are not called to fall in love, you're called to walk in love, right? So you don't just fall into love or fall out of love, you walk in love. And how do you walk in love? You sacrifice, you give up some things, you put in the time, you put in the investment. That's how you walk into love, and that's what marriage requires. We love this analogy, my wife and I, the banking analogy. I think everybody understands money. So when we talk about money, you're talking about your bank account, for it to stay in the positive, it requires regular deposits into it.
Yes.
You got to deposit into that bank account.
Yes.
You know, because in marriage, if your marriage is a bank account, you got to have love deposits into that marital account. Because hard times will come. Like we're not here to paint this picture that you apply these things and you will never face challenges in your marriage. That is a lie. And we're, I'll be the first one to say, my wife and I have seen some things, but my wife and I, we are better because we have went through what we have went through, and we did not try to go around it, even though it was tempting.
Yeah.
We did
That's
not go around our issues. We went through them because
that's
there
good.
is
That's
growth
good.
in that.
That's
So your bank account needs to be deposited into, right?
Yes.
So when you have those major withdrawals, you don't go into the negatives, right? There is a cushion in which is able to catch you and you would continue to pour back into it. So, like what we tell couples all the time, make sure that in your dating, in your marriage, there are regular times where you come together and check in with one another, right? And that may look different from every marriage, and the frequency of that may look different, but you have to come together and say, man, how are we doing? How are we? Like, in addition to those counseling and those coaching, you do need that devoted time to come in and say, how are we doing? And then you also need a regular dating. Like, you got children. I get it. We have a 2-year old, and I know how bad, how demanding, not how bad. I didn't mean to say that. I mean, we love our 2-year old, but how demanding time is and all of that. You're trying to balance everything, and we're in the middle of a pandemic and all of
Yeah.
that. So we're trying to figure things out. But
Yeah.
you have to carve out time for the two of you, because a lot of people who are empty nesters, when their kids hit 18, they're waking up next to a stranger because they have not
Yes.
invested in time to
Yes.
cultivate that friendship, to continue to knowing one another. Like what you said, Warren, like that's what Peter says, right? In First Peter 3:7, live with your wife in accordance to knowledge. You have to know
Yes.
her. You have to
Yes.
understand who she is. You have to
Yes.
understand her needs. And yes, you may not be able to meet all of them, but you can pray before a God who is able to meet your needs because you know what our needs are, right? So
Yes.
we have to make sure that we're investing in that time.
Yes. Yes.
As you were talking, Joe, I had to pull up the song by Luther Vandross. Boy, I listen. Listen, I was about to break out into a tear. I'm not gonna lie, because I started hearing, "I'd rather have bad times with you than good times with
Good
someone
time
else.
with someone
I'd
else.
rather be by, I'd rather be beside you in a storm than safe and warm by myself. I'd
Mm.
rather have hard times together than to have it easy apart. I'd rather have the one who holds my heart." Boy, let me tell you, yes,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, look, you can go alone or you can go with somebody.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And marriage is about going with somebody. You know, we're going to have hard times in life. You can go alone or you can go with somebody. We're going to have difficult times. We're going to have sickness. And it's not to say that everybody should get married. We're saying that if you are married, enjoy the marriage that you're in,
Yes.
build on to it. I had a couple that I was dealing with, and they had already made, well, one person in the marriage had made up in their mind that in about a year the marriage would be it would be over. Like it was already decided, like we're going to take this time to determine if we're going to stay together. My mind is already set, we're going to separate.
Mm.
And I'm gonna get to the end of the story, then to come back a little bit. They are over 25 years married now.
Mm.
You know, and what I did with one of the individuals in the marriage was just explain to that person biblically, what are you doing? What is your role? If you do it the way God outlined it, as the God tells the husband to do certain things, and God tells the wife to do certain things, if you do it that way, it has no choice but to prosper. Not saying, I'm gonna be honest now, that's not saying that it will stay together, because prospering, maybe y'all wasn't together right. And so God is now saying, now that you're doing it right, you should have never got together.
Hmm.
So you have to understand biblically what your role is as a husband and what your role is as a father. I mean, a wife.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's good. And I'm going to say this, that be careful who you bring along
Talk about it.
marriage, right? Because it's you can have your friends, whether they're married or single,
Yeah.
but they don't belong in your marriage.
Right.
Right. And so when you're trying to figure these things out with your spouse, when you're trying to have these conversations, trying to get to know your spouse, that's between you and your spouse, not between you and your girlfriend,
Right.
not between your boy, because their intentions may not align with God's intention.
Right.
And I think and I always say two of the hardest jobs that I have ever had in my life is being a mother and being a spouse, being a wife,
Yes.
right? Because neither one of those jobs come with a manual that tells me what to do that's right and what to do that's wrong. Okay. So you have to learn your spouse and you have to figure that out between you. And that's the importance of marital preparation, because once you put divorce on the table, once
It's
you
hard.
throw that out, it's there. You
It's hard to remove it. You're right.
You put that thought out and it continues to come up because you've said it, you've brought it up, you've allowed that to enter into your relationship, and now it has a permanent space.
Yeah.
So don't do it. Don't bring it up.
Divorce is a curse word in my marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a comment.
Okay.
I think this is it's a heavy comment. I think there's a little bit of confession in here, and there's a lot of honesty in here. So I want to read the comment. It says, "I thought that marriage meant automatic sex whenever I want, not realizing she is a person who wants to grow into something bigger than just sex, which in turn made me evaluate the foundation in which we stood on." Portia, man, I appreciate you for being honest. I appreciate you for saying that. I appreciate you for sharing that with us, because that is very bold to say that. But the honesty in it is the truth, and that goes back to what we're saying pretty much through the whole thing. Coming in with the preconceived notions of what the expectation is in marriage, and the good thing, which we haven't really dealt with, is the good thing is, if you come in without the counseling, if you come in without doing the work, if you come in and you're not right, if you come in and you don't know what marriage is, you can always grow. That's that growth part we've been talking about. You can always grow. You can always get something out of it. Not necessarily get something out of it, but you can always build on it. Marriage, I equate it to a building project. I hate to say it like this, but in the church, there's always the building fund. They're always taking up money to build.
Always collecting.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And so marriage is like that. We're always building. We're always building. So we should always be building in this marriage.
Yeah.
And I in my marriage, and I tell other people this, every 5 years I have a new marriage, because every 5 years we've had different gates in our marriage. Between me retiring from the military, between my daughter moving out the house, between my daughter becoming a teenager, between my son becoming a teenager, between teaching them how to walk, between teaching them how to drive. These are all different gates that you go through. And then the empty nester. I had a friend of mine that said, man, I got to come to realize and see if I even know my wife and if I really love my wife, because all of the children alone, we've been running behind children for so long. They're all gone, and now it's me and my wife. He said, but the good thing is, I know I already love him.
Yeah.
Oh, let me. Go ahead. Somebody comment, and it's another comment that's good.
I just wanted to say that considering, why God created sex, right, was for procreation, right? It's the husband and wife coming together and then having children and building their families. And that level of intimacy is an expression of love.
Yes.
Right? But it doesn't say that that expression, that particular expression, occurs as the only evidence of love.
That's good.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
So that's one way that you express love, but you have to find other ways,
Yeah.
or your that's going to die. You know, you've got to find other ways to build upon it. You have to find other ways to express love and to show love and to receive love. We're good at giving love, but we also have to receive love, right? And so that's the other side of that, expressing, showing God's love, His love for the church, that goes beyond um, that level of intimacy.
And I want to add to that, Kim, not just expressing love, but expressing love that my spouse receives.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Because, like I said earlier, and using an example, talking to Joe, you know, if we go out to the movies, or if I like the movies and my wife don't like the movies, then that's not an expression of love.
hmm
You know.
I want to jump in real quick, Warren. I know you're gonna. There's the other comment, but I definitely want to applaud the brother who was just that honest,
yeah,
right?
Yes.
And the combination is that you're not alone in that, because we are a product of this air that we breathe.
Yes.
And I can speak for men. I can speak at least for myself in that everything that we see and everything that we breathe is is shaping our mindset to go into marriage expecting that's what marriage will be. If you want a guilty-free sex, go ahead and get married. And that's not what marriage is, right? It's not just guilty-free sex. And many intermarriage and realizing, like, that's not what this, this is not all this, what I signed up for. And the enemy has a way to deceive us where in dating, man, our minds are bent towards
yeah,
sex. That's the only thing we do. I can't keep my hands off my wife. She can't keep my girlfriend, whatever, right? Now she can't keep her hands off of me. And we get married and things are different, right? That's just the perversion that the enemy is able
Yes.
to just bring in, right? So don't you're not alone in that thinking. But as somebody was saying, I think it was Jill, in that there is that continual learning aspect, right? There is that, how are you learning your spouse? What resources are you investing in to be a better spouse, right? Because that the first part, I think you got that on check. Humility. Hey, this is what I used to think. Now I see that it's not
Right.
right. Now what do I do? What you do is that, hey, we're going to be reading a book a month. We're going to be reading a book and understanding what is sex in marriage. There are many resources out there. We're going to be reading a book on how do we cultivate friendship, how do we deepen our intimacy in our marriage. And
that's
intimacy does not equal sex, right?
that's right.
Intimacy is more to that. So how do we cultivate that in our marriage? So I think, man, kudos to you, brother, man. I applaud you. Keep going, keep pursuing your wife, keep learning your wife. And God honors that. I think at the end of the day, we are helpless, man. We're short, but God honors our effort and humility.
Yes.
I love
Yes.
what you both said, Joe and Dr. Kimberly, talking about, yes, sex is one way that we express love, but there's so many others. And we oftentimes underestimate the power of non-sexual touching, right? Don't forget about that. Don't leave that off the table, or don't get so busy into your work, your business, your entrepreneurial journey, the kids, that you don't take time to passionately kiss your spouse or hug or cuddle. Or even just, don't have to be sexual, whether that's their love language or not. And I do
Yeah.
agree with what you said, Mr. Bowtie, in terms of expressing it in their way. But I believe everybody likes to be touched, right? Because even from infancy state, a lot of times when our parents were soothing us, it was some type of touch that came into play. So that is something we all can receive. Some people have a higher level of appreciation than others, but that's one way. And another way, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, is talking about really having that open and honest communication, because that leads to intimacy. See, at one time, if I can be real honest, I used to think that sex and intimacy was one and the same, but it's not, because you can have sex without intimacy.
Yes.
Right. So you got to make sure that you have that time that you are communicating, because when you communicate your feelings, especially not just about the mundane tasks of picking up the kids and going to the grocery store, but how do you feel? How does this make you feel? What's going on with you? Like getting beyond the surface, because you want to really be vulnerable and you want your partner to be vulnerable, and you can
Yes.
really share your heart about what's going on with you. Because a lot of times, if you don't really tap in, then you find yourself tapping out.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
also say, I know it was mentioned earlier about the importance of reinventing, right? And someone mentioned that they reinvent their marriage every 5 years. And that's how you keep your marriage exciting, that will honor God. And not only just that, another thing, if I could be honest, I used to be guilty of, I wanted to do special things on the anniversary, like just, go all out on those days. But what I've learned is don't wait for an anniversary to do something special or do something different. Don't wait for a birthday to do something amazing. You can do it anytime. Avoid the temptation of getting into that same routine week after week, month after month, year after year, because it will get stale and it will get boring. Switch it up. Even whether that's in the bedroom, you want to switch some things up, and where you go, switch it up. Be intentional. Plan a trip. Go away for the weekend. Do something adventurous. Your marriage is what you make it. Period. And like Mr. Rose High said, is what you put in is what you got, you're going to get out. So what are you putting into it? Do something different. I'm going to drop a couple of gems and I'm going to pass the mic. You know what? I got a karaoke machine, and one night at our own at-home date night, I'm like, babe, we're going to do karaoke tonight. And at first he was like, oh my God. But by the end of that, we were having a blast. It was so much fun, just me and him. We'll start to think outside the box. We start to do spades, just different things we're doing to try to explore and try to shake it up. Because after you've been married 5-10 years, you'd be wanting something like, okay, we've been doing this the last 5 years. Can we do something different? So be creative. Google, go on YouTube, figure it out. Put some time and effort and energy in what you're going to do. Just we put all that time and energy in all these other projects that we're pursuing. Give your marriage that same level of energy that you're giving all that other stuff, and you won't fail.
Yeah. And the best thing about it is that's your spouse. So that's your spouse. Do what you want to do with your spouse, right? You can do that. It's okay.
It's undefiled. The bed is undefiled. It's not.
Yes.
Go for it.
Love your spouse and then let them love you. That's your spouse, and that's your bedroom, right?
All right, let me before look. Somebody done kicked open the anthill and boy went an all got bit. Boy, I tell you. All right, let me read this comment. And the first person that jumps on it, it's yours. And then I got one more comment, and we're gonna go ahead and I knew this was gonna be good, but the time is coming up to end the show. So let me read this comment, and the first person that wants to talk about it is yours. The comment says, "Marriage is work," which I should take because that's the name of my book. Marriage is work, but extremely rewarding. Marriage requires a level of maturity and being able to recognize those blind spots, being cognizant of the blind spots. A blind spots could not be having emotional intelligence or not be able to express yourself with your spouse. Intimacy is vital in marriage.
I mean, do we need to say?
Yeah, I think she, exclamation. All right, exclamation point.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I said the two hardest jobs, and I'm sure that everybody here, and even those listening, will agree that it's hard being a wife. It's hard being a husband, a spouse. So yeah.
I want to say this. I think we have to understand, and when we talk about intimacy, we do have to spend the time to unpack what is intimacy.
Yes.
And there are different facets to intimacy, right? There is emotional intimacy, there is physical intimacy, there is financial, spiritual. And so we have to understand, like, we may be at a 100 on this level, specific type of intimacy, but we may be struggling at this type of intimacy. So we usually love to encourage couples is to sit down and evaluate where you are on this different type of intimacy. People have great intimacies in, like physical, like your sex is great and all of that, but you can't communicate with money, right? So that there's a hindrance there, right? That you gotta, if your financial intimacy was also where it needs to be, that will enhance your intimacy in the bedroom. So we have to understand those different levels of intimacy, and the foundation, we believe,
Yes.
is the spiritual intimacy.
Yes.
If you
Yes.
have a relationship with God, he's just going the ability to be able to get into that space. What is intimacy? Into me, see, right? Into me, see. I am opening myself. I am allowing you to come into my world with my vulnerabilities, my shortcomings, with all the flaws that I have, but I am naked before you, right? For you to see me. But I cannot do that if I am not, if I don't know God, because I think God is light. And the more that we see him, the more we know him, the more his light shines upon us, and the more that we see ourselves, and the more comfortable we are with ourselves. Not that we're comfortable staying where we are, but we know that with who I am in my condition right now, he still died on that cross for me, right? I didn't catch God by surprise, like, well, Joe, I didn't know. I mean, when you were married, I mean, I had this hopes of who you're going to be, and you turn out to be like this. He knows exactly who I am. So you being vulnerable and open before him, that will allow you to be vulnerable and open before your spouse.
All right, we
And
got one more comment.
can I just add just a little bit? I
I'm
mean,
gonna have to start a timer. I'm gonna have to start a
God
timer.
wrote, he wrote the original love book, the
Yeah,
original book of love. And
yes.
it tells us how to be intimate, how to love. It talks about every level of intimacy that there is. That's all. That's all I got.
All right, this is gonna be the last comment because if not, we're gonna be on here. It's gonna turn into a seminar. Hey, I just wanted, before I read this last comment, hey, I knew this was going to be good because, all of us have the same passion for building stronger marriages. We are investing precious time to ensure that the people that we talk to and the people around us, marriages are not just surviving, but they're thriving. And so I knew this was going to be good. Um, Thank you, Kay Alexander, for your comments. Thank you, Porsche, for your comments. Thank you, Siobhan, for your comments. Thank you, Sebastian, for your comments. Thank you, everyone that has commented. And Tracy we're gonna use your comment as the last discussion, and then we're gonna close it out. Tracy says, and this is something that we was talking about earlier, and we just kind of kept going. So we're going to end it on, well, that's the problem. Most of us did not biblically seek out our mate based upon seeking God first in order for a man to fulfill the scripture as it says, he who finds a wife must must most don't bring God into the equation until we've entered the marriage or hit hard times. And I'm a co-sign Tracy and say when I first got married, I did not bring God in first. But you're right, when times hit hard, I sure did go to God. And it was one of the best things that I did. I'm glad that I did. And it helped me to understand and define marriage and what marriage is and what a husband is and what a wife is and what the two of us come together. But it was very difficult before God. It was very trying. There was a lot of hard times. And it wasn't even that the time it wasn't even like I heard somebody preach about the prodigal son. The land was in a famine, but he was able to get a job. So what kind of famine was it? If it's a famine, how was he able to get a job? And that's kind of how my marriage was. Like it wasn't bad, but we were just there. It was like a spaceship with no direction. We just out in space somewhere. And then in the process of me wanting more out of marriage and understanding marriage, I went back to who I knew who started marriage, and that has been the best part about my marriage. It helped me to understand my spouse. It helped me to understand me. It helped me to understand my role, my wife's role, our role. It helped us in raising children and finding the right place to live in the car and all of that. So it takes all of God. Even if you don't start with God, you can still get in God.
I think I started with just reminding everyone, and Tracy especially, that God is the creator of marriage. So whether you acknowledge him when you get married or later in the marriage, um, marriage is God's creation.
Yes, it is.
It was his design that we come together, um, and to be married. And out of that marriage, we grow not just in him, but grow with our spouses. We love our spouses as God loved the church. So whether you um, acknowledge him because he's already there, whether you acknowledge him when you come into the marriage or a year or two later, God's position is, I'm here and thank you for inviting me in. Right? I'm here. He's there, and what you're saying, God, I need you. God, I, I, I release this to you. God is saying, thank you,
Yeah.
because I'm going to handle this, and I wanted to handle this, but I want you to know he does things in such a way that we have no choice but to give him glory and acknowledge him, right? And so, just remember that as long as he is there, even the tough times that you're going through, it's only to make you better. Even the that coal has to go through the fire to turn out to be a diamond. It gets a little hot sometimes, but the outcome is great. It's brilliant.
Yes, yes. All right, one more person comment, then we're gonna do closing remarks. Anybody got any?
I'll jump in and say that no marriage is too far gone that God, no marriage is too far gone that God cannot redeem it, right? So we come into marriage with all these things, and like I'm with you, Warren. I came into marriage, and God was not who I was seeking after, right? There were all these worldly conditioning and worldly thoughts and worldly ideas that I brought into my marriage that being a man of God was not who I was thinking to be. Now, I did tell my wife the day we got married is that, we stuck together. Like,
I know that's
things
right.
gonna happen and all of that, but we stuck together. But I didn't have the mentality that there's gonna be growth, there's gonna be work and all these things. So, we come into this marriage thing, just embrace that, and the sooner we bring in God, the better it is, because damage still happens. Now, repairing the harm that has done, the more damage that has been done, the harder the work is going to be. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful, you're not going to be able to heal, but that's just the facts, right? The more the damage, the harder the work. So the sooner that we bring in God, and the sooner that we take the time and to invest and all of that, the easier path that we're gonna have. And like you said, man, they just kind of stuck with me. We don't want to just survive the journey. We want to enjoy it. We want to bring him glory. We want to fulfill our purpose, right? All these things, we want to do that. And God's blessings flow through your marital union. Like,
Mm.
that's God's blessings flow through that. So you want healthy children. You want them to see a healthy marriage. Guess what they're going to see from? They're going to see from you and your spouse. You want them to be the husband or the wife that God designed them to be. Guess what they're learning from? You and your spouse. So this is the way that we have this generational blessings. A lot of people talk about breaking generational curses. Generational curses are broken in your marital union, a union that honors God.
Yes,
Man.
yes. This has been great. This has been wonderful. I love you all. Thank you for accepting the invite. But more importantly, thank you for bringing your passion. You can see by the comments that this has been well received. You can see by the comments that people really enjoyed it. You can see by the comment that people have benefited from our passion. So I thank you. And like I said, I always want to start the year off on marriage, because if we're talking about the center of everything is family, then it has to be that the center of family is marriage. So we definitely want to just, oh my gosh, listen, I done held back a couple of tears tonight because it got that good. So we're going to go ahead and end it on out. We can go on for days and days and days and talk more and more and more about this, but we've already extended the time, and I don't want to stop. That's why I'm So let me just say, all right, look. So we're going to go ahead and close the show out. So everybody's going to come up and they're going to go ahead and give their last uh, final remarks. Please tell us who you are. Please tell us how we can get in contact with you. Tell us any programs, any specials, or anything that you have going on. And we will start with Dr. Kimberly Gregory.
Okay. All right. So, in closing, we've talked a lot about marriage, about preparing for marriage, about um, making sure that you understand that marriage is by God's creation. It was through his design. And so I want to encourage you, those that are having challenges or opportunities for growth in your marriage, to reach out, to surround yourself with people that have invested in your marriage. Surround yourself with those people that align with God's plan and intention for marriage, and to continue to seek Him and allow your marriage to grow. You can reach me at GregoryKimberly01@gmail.com. That's GregoryKimberly01@gmail.com. And I have appreciated the opportunity to share with you this evening.
All right, Kim, we do thank you for being on. Now we will go to Joe.
Wow, Warren, Dr. Kim, Jill, like this has been an awesome conversation. I always leave these sessions being fed, right, and filled because the passion that you all bring just excites me. And this thing requires all of us. So this is a great conversation and great idea, and we need to continue these conversations. Just like what we have shared in this conversation is that what God has prescribed, He hasn't made it mysterious. Meaning, marriage is simple. Now, I'm saying simple, not easy. It's not easy because we have the flesh. The flesh wants to take charge. I don't want to give up my sovereignty, and I don't have any sovereignty, but I feel as if I'm entitled to be a rule of my world. But God is the sovereign one, right? So I don't want to give up that to follow and submit to His plans. And that's what we need to cultivate the time into knowing Him. And just to share, like, all of what we have discussed, we have recently published the ebook. It's a simple guide, a simple tool called the Forever Marriage Mindset. And in that, we highlight that in your journey to a forever marriage, the three most critical pillars or principles that you need to adopt and seek and understand and apply is Christ. You need a relationship with Christ. You need community. Dr. Kim talked a lot about community. Who are those people that you can trust and bring into your marriage, right? Because not everybody belongs in your marriage. There are people whom you trust, people who love God, people who love marriage, and people who love you and your spouse. Those are the people that you bring in, including counselors and coaches, and then continual learning. How are we investing in this union? Because if it's worth it to you, then you're going to invest in it for, in the long haul. So check out the ebook. You can visit our website at www.forever-marriages.com to learn more. You can send us an email at info@forever-marriages.com. And then you also connect with us on Instagram at Forever Marriages. That's where we live. I mean, that's our home on there. But it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. God bless. God bless your marriages.
We appreciate you being on here, Joe. Thank you for accepting the invite. Jill, go ahead and let us know how to get in contact with you and give us some closing remarks.
Absolutely. This has been amazing. You see me looking down from time to time. Know that I am taking copious notes throughout this conversation. One last thing I want to share with you guys is just remember that the truth will set you free, period. So you want to first be truthful with yourself. Don't make the mistake of, especially if you're in a place where you're struggling with something don't seem quite right, or maybe you're dealing with just find yourself being pulled in a direction you know you don't be supposed to be going, but you feel that way. So what I want to tell you is first be truthful with yourself that there's a struggle there and something needs to be addressed. Don't try to numb the pain. Don't try to medicate, self-medicate. Get the support you need. Be honest with yourself and be honest with your spouse. Because what I know for sure, when you let a problem go unresolved for a prolonged period, it don't get resolved and it doesn't go away. It just evolves and it tends to build momentum over time. So make sure you are getting the support you need. And if that's counseling, let it be counseling. And not to say it always has to be talking to a therapist, which that is part of counseling, but there's other treatment that they do, other things they can do to help you to get relief and get into the place that you need to be. You don't have to suffer in silence, period. You can contact me at talkwithjill.com. So if you want to book a call and learn more about how I can support you, if you have questions about what I do, then, or how, like I said, how I can support you specifically, go to talkwithjill.com, talkwithjill.com. I'm also on IG and Facebook and YouTube at Jill Bulluck. And my last name does not have an O in it. It's just Bulluck. You can connect with me there. And once you start to, as I said at the beginning, when you transform yourself, it will lead to you transforming your relationships. And then from there, you will ultimately transform the world. So everything begins and ends with you. Let's do this. Be transformed.
I appreciate you, Jill. Thank you very much. Hey, this has been a phenomenal show. I don't know about you, but I learned so much from these powerhouses in marriage. Let me tell you, when I talk about marriage, I want to bring in those that have that like passion. All of us want to see marriages prosper, want to see marriages strengthened, want to see marriage biblical. That's where the marriage is most successful at. So hey, again, I tip my hat and I applaud you all for coming on. Want to thank everybody that commented: Sebastian, Kay, Siobhan, Tracy, and Marissa. Even though you couldn't be here, you decided to still support your husband. I thought that was beautiful. I wanted to acknowledge that she did. She wasn't able to be on, so she found a way to be on. Like that's beautiful right there. And everyone else, if I missed you, I am so sorry. I'm going through all this right now, and so many comments I can't even come up. But thank you for coming on. Listen, if you are struggling in your marriage, if you want your marriage to be stronger, there are things that you can do. I have a book entitled Marriage's Work. You get out what you put in, and the goal is to identify some things that people are having issues with in marriage that a lot of counselors are not discussing and not talking with. You can find the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, other avenues, or you can get an autographed copy from me at www.warrenmrbowtiefeaster.com. I am also doing a Filling in the Cracks relationship series. That series is going to be, it's actually in development. I've transitioned how I did it last year and redeveloping how I'm going to do it this year. But definitely, if you want to get in contact with me and ask me about that, you can reach me at my website, or you can type FITC for Filling in the Cracks to 931-320-9809, and I would definitely get some information to you on how we're going to do that. Hey, this has been great. It's all about marriages. It's all about families. If you build stronger marriages, then we'll build stronger families. We build stronger families, we have stronger communities, and a lot of problems that we have will be resolved. I truly believe that a lot of the problems that we're having a lot of problems that we are having in this nation can be resolved at the dinner room table. So let's just sit down and have a conversation and spend quality time with our spouses. This has been another episode of Let's Talk Family, where we come together and we provide resources to strengthen families. I'm Warren, Mr. Bowtie Feaster, and I always like to end with my 3 points of interest. 1, the center of everything is family. 2, be the best you that you can be. And 3, it's called life. Live it. Have a great day.